This was quite the movie-going experience. Don't worry, I ultimately really enjoyed this movie, but I think that I was sent into it with the wrong mindset, which affected my enjoyment of it while I was watching it. So I kind of want to set the record straight going in so that that doesn't happen to those of you who haven't seen it yet. And then in the second half of this video, this is a half spoiler review, I want to talk about the really beautiful messages of the movie, which I think get lost a little bit in the quirkiness. It's like looking for gems in like a grab bag of like dollar store stuff, right? And that's actually a very good description of this. But the messages are so beautiful. I think this film is going to be an awards contender. So if you're at all interested in cinema, you need to see this. But I want to make sure you go in. I want to make sure you're set up right to go in. So I've seen a lot of talk about this being a multiverse movie, an indie superhero film. I think one of you said, oh, it's the best superhero movie I've ever seen. And I gotta tell you, that was not a good thing to tweet to me because it put me in the totally, again, wrong mindset to see this movie. That is not what this is at all. There's hardly any martial arts in the film, even though Michelle Yeoh is the star. She does some, but they're not particularly well choreographed or filmed, so there might as well not be any at all. Also, we never spend that much time in any of the alternate universes. For all the, there have been actually a lot of alternate universe movies and shows throughout the years before superhero movies like went full throttle with that idea. And in those stories, we always spend a significant amount of time in the other options. So I was expecting to spend a lot of time with all the different Michelle Yeohs. So I was disappointed that that's not the case whatsoever. In fact, halfway through the movie, I was like, we're spending an awful lot of time in this office building, which is the IRS building, but it's basically an abandoned office building they were able to film in. And I was like, oh, I get it now. This is a very low budget indie that's filmed mostly just in 2 locations. Again, that office building and a laundromat, which is very clever from a business perspective, from a producing perspective. And then with the idea of the multiverse and some, cool, it cost $25 million to make this movie, probably mostly for the VFX budget, which again, though, is used sparingly to make it, it's like, I don't know, like it's supposed to be larger in scope, but it's not really larger in scope. So I would not sell it that way at all. It's like, it's barely a multiverse movie in my opinion. This is actually a very clever movie about human relationships, including the one you have with yourself, and how that's all that really matters in life. And I think it gets it across very effectively if you look for it. And so that's what I want to talk about in the spoiler section of this. But first off, I'm just going to review the movie with no spoilers. I will say that watching the film, my favorite parts were the beginning, where Michelle Yeoh really does some fantastic nuanced acting, and then the third act, where the best points are made. The movie's way too long, way too long. I couldn't believe it was still going, especially because I did not like the middle so much. So they were like, there's more, and I'm like, you kidding me? I'd say it's 20 to 30 minutes too long, but I ended up, again, enjoying it and really appreciating it. I think I like it more intellectually than I do emotionally, but that's fine. But I like the beginning and the end the best. The middle, again, just too crazy for me, and I was disappointed that it didn't go bigger in terms of scale and scope, physically, I guess you could say. Because, emotionally it does. Also, I'm not a fan of gross out stuff. I don't like gross out stuff. So having the characters have to do, I'm not going to tell you why they have to do these things, you'll discover it in the movie, but having them do zany, wild things like snort a live fly, eat chapstick in close-up, or stick something up their butt, this is not fun for me. I was like, I don't need to see this. So that kind of like, diluted my experience. To me, what really makes this movie work are the actors. I think they do a phenomenal job. And then also the writing. The quirkiness, I think, is a distraction and gets in the way of this movie. It's the Daniels. It's their calling card. It has to be this kooky and crazy, or it's not their shtick, right? But I don't know if they'll ever be able to be truly mainstream because of that, if they're not willing to move past that. The exploration of Evelyn's life of regret and how her anger and disappointment have not only dragged her down, but her husband and daughter as well, is fascinating. That was really cool to explore. I've seen Michelle Yeoh in so many movies over the years, but I've never seen her, particularly in a mainly English language film, have the opportunity to really act like this. I would say she's as good an actress as she is a martial artist, and that US audiences don't know that or haven't known that up until this point is a real shame. She's fantastic. I also really like showing an immigrant family realistically from their own perspective, including humor. It's important to be able to laugh at yourself, but also with a lot of dignity. I thought it was just really a great, and sometimes it was a little bit like the Goldbergs, but for this Chinese immigrant family. And I thought they were just as like early seasons of the Goldbergs. And Jamie Lee Curtis at first seemed to me to be doing an over-the-top caricature, which she is to some degree. But in the third act, when we really get to know that character a bit more and the walls come down, I was really moved by her performance as well. And I was like, wow, Jamie Lee Curtis ended up really bringing it. But the real surprise is Short Round himself, all grown up. Quan as Waymond, Evelyn's husband. During the movie, I did not make the connection that it was him. I was like, where did this guy come from? His performance is so unique, and he holds his own opposite Michelle Yeoh. So sure enough, after the movie, I looked him up, and I was like, oh my God, it's Short Round. He was also in The Goonies, as many people are pointing out, but I've never seen The Goonies, so I can't make that connection. He has to play 3 different versions of his character. And while the main one, Waymond, is supposed to be the one who's the weakest at first, ultimately that one needs to come across as the strongest. And Quan does that. We'll talk more about his performance in the spoiler section. To me, the only actor who does not work here is Stephanie Hsu, who is also in The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel, by the way, and I have the same issue with her in both projects, and that's that she comes across as too stilted to me. She always seems like an actor playing a role rather than becoming the actual character and inhabiting the story. Awkwafina was supposed to play this role originally, and I think she would have been a much better choice, as I think she's much more on par with the talents of Yeoh and Quan. I only felt sorry for Sue's character Joy through Michelle Yeoh's performance. It took Michelle Yeoh to give the daughter character depth and meaning. So I didn't think Stephanie Hsu worked out. So I think Everything, Everywhere, All at Once is actually a very strong film, but in an effort to appeal to the mainstream, it's being mislabeled, but that's a fruitless endeavor because it's too quirky to ever be mainstream anyway, so I don't think they should have even bothered. I don't think it's as good as Birdman, to be honest with you, but I definitely think it's on the level of Charlie Kaufman's best work, and is equally inaccessible to the mainstream. I do see nominations for this, but not a lot of wins. I think its best chances for wins are Michelle Yeoh. I would vote for her in a heartbeat on this. And then because I think the message of the movie is so strong and so perfect for today's era, and I think messages, you know, awards are decided by messages, as you know. And I think that the Daniels put forward something so important here that I don't see them getting director, because I actually don't think the movie's that well directed, but I think best original screenplay is their best shot at winning. All right, so let's talk spoilers. So if you've seen the movie, let's dish. But if you haven't seen the movie, go check it out, especially if you're into cinema. You're going to want to see this movie, then come back. All right, and because I think some of this stuff you might not pick up on some of this stuff, and you might have some thoughts down below. Please mark them as spoilers that I might have missed. So I would love to discuss this with you. I think this movie probably benefits from multiple viewings. So you'll notice that while Michelle Yeoh has different careers in each universe, the constants are her personal relationships. Waymond, her daughter Joy, except when she and Waymond didn't get together, and her father are always there. That's really important, because that highlights that nothing matters in the grand scheme of things except your relationships with people. And Waymond sees that elderly couple at the IRS who always at least have each other, and that's what he wants out of life. Evil Joy, it turns out, the big villain, is searching for a version of her mother, not to destroy, but to understand her. She's searching for that human connection. And also, that's what makes Evelyn finally snap out of it, that she realizes that Joy is more like her than different. And so that connection is made. And that she says nothing matters, but she's saying it, and that nothing matters except our relationship. My relationship with my daughter, my relationship with my husband. The family can only break through to Deirdre, Jamie Lee Curtis's character, when they make a human connection with her. And again, those walls come down. That's amazing. And in the universe where Evelyn and Waymond are the most successful but are apart, they both come to the realization that they would much rather have been together than for all the success they achieved there. I mean, that line where Waymond says, you know, successful Waymond says, I would have much rather had a life of just doing taxes and laundry together. That would have been enough for me. That was beautiful. And it shows how clever it is that Daniels chose that to be the center of you know, the focus, the IRS and this laundromat of the movie, because those are necessary, mundane chores that take up so much of our life. And so that makes that line just really poetic. And on that note, you might have noticed that the universe that causes all these problems in the first place is the alphaverse, you know, an alpha type of person. And at first, Evelyn thinks that the alpha version of her husband is much better than the version that she has. She feels she's much more attracted to him at first. And it's in the alphaverse where this Evelyn apparently reached her full ability to achieve, but look what she wrought. She almost destroyed everything. And it's this alpha Evelyn that pushed her daughter to overachieve and to be driven over the edge to become a villain. So Everything Everywhere All at Once is in some ways a celebration of the beta over the alpha, which is fascinating. It's just like this movie is a celebration of the beta. Especially with Waymond's big speech at the end. You know, he says he feels constantly overwhelmed in life, you know, everything, everywhere, all at once, and that somehow it's all his fault, which I think is very relatable. And he chooses to fight that with positivity and kindness. And then Evelyn, at the end of the day, she wins by fighting with those things as well instead of brute force. That's a beautiful message, and I think it's particularly important where we are today. Waymond isn't a fool who is happy because he doesn't know any better, but he is happy because he actively made that choice. And to see Evelyn then look at her life again, to look past her disappointment, but to see it through the lens of Waymond's happiness, that they just get to be together, that they're just alive, even if they're just barely getting by because life is hard, is also really beautiful. Happiness is a choice. And I think that's also the main message of Everything Everywhere All at Once. Choose happiness and choose people. And those, like, it's what came first, the chicken or the egg? You'll be happy because you chose people. And by choosing people, you'll be happy. And that's really fantastic, because in the grand scheme of things, no matter all the endless possibilities in life, at the end of the day, the only thing that truly matters are people. And I would agree with that. I would agree with that. And that feeling of it's just great to be alive and to focus on that instead. Again, the movie is very quirky with mixed results. I thought the ratatouille, a raccoon instead of a rat, was a very funny joke, because so often parents, you know, and sometimes immigrant parents will misinterpret something. Everyone's parents do that in pop culture, and they'll make a very funny, but sometimes also very telling mistake. And I thought that there was an alternate universe where Harry Shum Jr. was controlled by a raccoon, Ratatouille style, was very clever. But then ultimately, I thought that joke, you know, went on for too long and didn't go anywhere. I did not appreciate using a dog as a weapon. I did not like that. I did not like Jenny Slate's, I thought calling her Big Nose was insensitive and not funny. And I didn't think the movie needed the S&M jokes sprinkled throughout. It wasn't funny, again, and also limits its audience. So I thought no reason for it to be, except just the Daniels being the Daniels. But you know what I really liked? The rocks. I really liked the rocks. When Michelle Yeoh's rock turned around and had the googly eyes on to try and cheer her daughter up and tried to come over to Joy's rock for a hug, even though they weren't supposed to move because they were rocks. And then she let Joy's rock jump off the edge of the cliff because she just wanted to be alone, but then flung herself after her. For some reason, even though it was just rocks, that was some of the most moving scenes in the movie. It really got me. So I think that is quite an accomplishment that should be recognized. Also, when the whole family was working together, despite all their differences, to pull Joy back from the abyss of the everything bagel, you know, which I thought was both funny but not funny, because I was like, oh, that's clever, but yet you didn't finish the metaphor. And they're like, whatever, leave us alone. But that the family, when the chips were down, came together to back each other up, that again was really beautiful. So yes, I think this movie is very clever, but sometimes it's too silly for its own good, and I think it blurs the intelligence of the core message. And again, as I said, it's also way too long. But I did enjoy it. I think its message is really stunning and powerful, and I do think it will be an awards contender, even though I don't think it will actually win a lot of awards. I think its best shot is Michelle Yeoh, and then its second best shot, I would love to see Quan nominated as well, but I don't know if this movie can float two acting noms. It depends. It's very early in the year. It depends what else comes out this year. If it's another slow year, then I think that they could both be nominated. And then I think the Daniels will almost certainly be nominated for Best Original Screenplay and have a very good chance at winning, like Jordan Peele and Taika Waititi before them with similarly quirky message movies. So that's my review of Everything Everywhere All at Once. And I'm very curious to hear your own thoughts about the movie and your own observations down below. And that's great. A movie that gets people talking, I think, should always be applauded. Even if I think it's not as perfect as some people might be saying it is. All right, so again, share those thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.